What's up, guys? So I'm going to start a new video review series where I basically go through all the WWE pay-per-views from 1998 all the way through until about 2004, 2005, before the WWE really started declining. Eventually, I'm going to go to WCW pay-per-views and ECW pay-per-views and maybe some hardcore ones. But I figured since this is my first video, I should give that introduction to give you guys an idea of what I'm going to bring to the table as far as my YouTube channel goes. So I started off in 1998, January, the Royal Rumble of 1998, and I was looking at the card, and I watched it through, and it was actually not a bad pay-per-view. Something to think about in 1997, 1998, while the Attitude Era was really starting to take force, is the fact that they were building these new characters in which they didn't really have much of. If you look at the Royal Rumble in 1998, specifically the Royal Rumble match, which I'll get to a little bit later, you'll see the talent, although they have some really big name talents, which will really showcase itself later on in the year of 1998. They didn't really have an abundance of talent, which I'll get to in the later Royal Rumble match. So getting into this, the very first match was Vader against the artist formerly known as Goldust. For people that don't know about that, Goldust was kind of mimicking Prince at the time, and it's just one of the alter egos of Goldust. He was accompanied to the ring by Luna. Um, it was a decent match. Goldust was a little bit out of shape, and he wrestles well. He does his gimmick very well, and he does a good job performing no matter what. Vader is a very underrated wrestler, and I mean the fact that he showed so much promise in other organizations and then came to the WWE just to, to have Vader as your opening act is fantastic. I mean, you can't get much better than that. Vader did very well in this match. He ended up getting the W. And it was a fairly decent match. It wasn't the best, but it's always, I'm a big Goldust fan, so it's always good to see Goldust out there wrestling. But yeah, so then the second match we had Mark Marrow. Or no, actually, sorry, we had the minis match. That's right, because Sunny came out and she started, doing her thing, and she's like, all those minis. Those minis, something to remember, that really shows like how much different wrestling was, or just the media in general was in the 90s compared to now. Like, you know, the humor's different, and it's just crazy to go back and watch some of these shows and then, see exactly like what they allowed back then compared to like nowadays. There's no contest. But the mini matches was entertaining. It was funny watching those midgets. It was a fairly long match. It went for almost 10 minutes. Kind of didn't really make much sense. Sonny started helping the minis out, and it was just a shit show. The Diva division back then wasn't really for wrestling like it is now. It was just mainly for for sex appeal and all that. Sonny, Sable, Luna. They didn't really wrestle that much. But so anyway, they had the minis match. Then business started picking up a little bit. Then we had The Rock versus Ken Shamrock in a very, very good Intercontinental Championship match. I really like Shamrock and The Rock's chemistry together. Each other put each other over multiple times in this feud. Shamrock ended up winning via a body slam, and then The Rock ended up. Okay, so The Rock hit Shamrock with brass knuckles, and Shamrock kicked out. It shows how strong they had Shamrock back then, and it shows that, you see Brock Lesnar nowadays, and he goes out there and he destroys Randy Orton, or he'll go out and he'll take out the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. And I understand WWE's not doing great, and it really adds a new dimension to their wrestling, but it really, they really did it right with Ken Shamrock, for instance. They didn't make him a world beater. You know, they're really hyping up the UFC with Brock Lesnar a lot. You know, I watch the UFC a lot, but with Ken Shamrock then he was hyping up the WWE. So for The Rock to go out and beat Shamrock when he would beat him clean, that was a big deal. You know, now beating Brock Lesnar, I mean, it's not gonna happen first of all, but I mean, it's just not the same. They can't get it on a consistent basis. So Shamrock ended up, beating The Rock, but The Rock hit Shamrock with brass knuckles before then. Shamrock kicked out, body slammed The Rock, pinned him. The Rock said, "Hey, he has brass knuckles in his pants," and Shamrock gets disqualified. It doesn't seem like that's how they would do it nowadays, but it was a great match, almost 11 minutes long, I believe. Um, Perfect timing. Those matches sometimes last a long time. And they can get boring, but Shamrock really delivers. The Rock always delivers. Great actor, and it really helped build The Rock. The Rock retained the Intercontinental Championship, and then he even eliminated Shamrock in the Royal Rumble. So The Rock gained a lot of traction from this pay-per-view. This was a really big pay-per-view in building The Rock's character. Because at the time, Rocky was just Rocky Maivia. He wasn't even the leader of the Nation of Domination. Farouk was at the time, which I'll get to a little bit later, and you can kind of see this is the beginning where The Rock becomes a main character and Farouk kind of falls out of the top of the nation. And it's really interesting just to see how that falls out. Because during the pay-per-view, you would see like the nation fighting, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble, like, and, it just, it really showed it. You'll see, you watch this pay-per-view and you see later on like how important this pay-per-view was to the not only just the involvement of The Rock in general, but so the very next match was a very good match, a very good lead up to the match. It was the Legion of Doom, the old school, the toughest in the game, the Legion of Doom. They're going out there and they're fighting these new guys, the New Age Outlaws, these young kids on the block who have the big mouth, and they have everything they want, the titles, the fame, the chicks, and they're over here and they had shaved Hawk's, what's it called, his fucking hair off, and they had put Animal through a table, and it was a really good match. It was it was a very fast paced match. Ended up the Legion of Doom got the upper hand, and then they tricked Legion of Doom, got Hawk handcuffed, and just beat the shit out of Animal. Hawk got loose and got him a couple times, but it was clear that the New Age Outlaws had gotten the better end of the of the stick. The New Age Outlaws, man, my thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, it was a great match when you have the New Age Outlaws and other, fantastic wrestlers like the Legion of Doom, two of the greatest tag teams in wrestling history, not just WWF history. But the fact that they, were able to put each other over the way they were, and just the way they wrestled each other was so great. I know I'm in the minority here, but like teams like the New Day and teams like wrestlers like R-Truth, I have a lot of respect for R-Truth, K-Quick, but like the way they push these wrestlers nowadays, like it's funny, but it's kind of funny in like a goofy way. Like the New Age Outlaws, they could rock on the mic, and the Legion of Doom, especially Hawk, they could really work the mic well. The Legion of Doom got the better of the New Age Outlaws in a lot of these promos, which was very rare to see, so it's just so refreshing to see that promo and watching the build up weeks to this, and just see the Legion of Doom just really, it's just great nostalgia. So it was a great match, the New Age Outlaws retained the titles by DQ, and we moved on to the Royal Rumble match. So the Royal Rumble match itself, like I said, I watched this kind of wrestling when I was young. I really came back and watched it in hindsight a lot to really gain my knowledge on it. So at the time, it was a really good Royal Rumble. Looking back on it, the match was great, very important in establishing certain characters. Stone Cold, The Rock, Mankind, But that being said, it lacked a lot of talent. I'm looking right here. I'm going through the Royal Rumble entrances. Mankind went out there 3 times. And the thing about that is, yeah, that's really great that Mankind went out there like that 3 times. Cactus Jack, Dude Love, Mick Foley. But at the same time, you really lack the talent. At the same time, 5 members of the Nation of Domination came out. That's great. I love Mark Henry. I love The Rock, all of them. But at the same time, it shows a real lack in 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 just talent. They later on in the year they ended up building a lot of talent. D'Lo Brown at the time, Val Venus comes in later, Steve Blackman, Jeff Jarrett comes in from the NWA. So some let me just give you a couple points that I basically liked from that Royal Rumble. I really liked how Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie, aka Terry Funk, started out. They have good chemistry together. Chainsaw ended up eliminating Cactus Jack, who was the first one eliminated. And then Mankind ended up eliminating Chainsaw Charlie. The Rock, man, he came out at number 3. He really did work. He stayed all the way until the very end. Um, it's really strange to see some of these characters that just didn't make it through going on like through the years, like Kurgan. That character was just really strange. You know, I was never a big fan of Kama, aka the Godfather. Uh, Vader really disappointed in this Royal Rumble. He went in for like 10 seconds and got eliminated. I know he was probably disappointed. I didn't know Ahmad Johnson was going to be in there. But other than that, it was a good Royal Rumble. The final 4 was, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was Dude Love, Stone Cold, The Rock, and Farouk. Now this is my downside on this. If you're going to have those 4, I was watching this Royal Rumble and I was just thinking this whole time, like watching this for, and I was like, man, it is so obvious that either Stone Cold or The Rock's gonna win this thing because, it was when your last 4 are another member of the Nation who is clearly not getting the props that he once had while building up The Rock. I mean, there was no other like Dude Love was. You just didn't know like what him coming out in 3 different characters doesn't really show continuity with his character, which usually ends up being what you look for a world champion. So it ended up, um, Dude Love gets thrown out, and then The Rock tricks Farouk and gets Farouk out, and then it was a really epic ending with Stone Cold and The Rock. The Rock sells very well as always. Was beating up on Stone Cold. The Rock, great endurance. One of the it really goes to show how great The Rock is. His acting skills are one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that he is the top in the game. Because he was only in there for 5 or 6 years, and the amount he did in that short amount of time, especially when he was in his prime, like it wasn't till later. Like he only had a few years in his prime. He just did so much ground, made up so much ground. But Stone Cold wins. He's got a main event WrestleMania against either the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels or the Phenom, the Undertaker. These two have been, feuding forever. Shawn Michaels has gotten the best of most of the occasions. Undertaker, feeling hugely underappreciated, wants his title shot, got so close at Bad Blood, had him on the ropes in that amazing Hell in a Cell match. Kane ended up coming out, making his famous debut, tombstoning Undertaker. So they go out there. The promo to this match was gold. Watching the promo for it just really brought so much nostalgia. Leading up to this match, Shawn Michaels had been in Undertaker's head. He had been just doing all these just little things that had been agitating the Undertaker, and Undertaker couldn't take it anymore. So he comes out. He's like, "We're gonna have a casket match. This is gonna be your end. My history with casket matches are unprecedented." Undertaker had been in a few casket matches at the time. He had only lost to Yokozuna, and it took like 15 people to get him out. But anyways, so anyway, he goes out there. You know, Kane at the time had just moved away from Paul Bearer because DX was trying to get in Undertaker's head, and they're like, the newest member of DX, Kane. Taker comes out. Shawn Michaels starts attacking Taker. Kane comes out. You know, so at the time, you're thinking Kane and Undertaker are together. There's no way, no matter what Triple H, China, no matter what he has up Shawn Michaels, devious sleeve, there's no way that Shawn Michaels is gonna come out with a championship because Kane and Taker are just the most dominant force ever. Like nobody looked at Kane and Undertaker like they did to anybody else. So great match, about a little bit over 20 minutes. Classic match as always. Undertaker doing spots, tombstoning them through, like into the casket. Shawn Michaels doing the elbow drop into the casket. Sweet chin music's out of nowhere. Fucking huge choke slams out of nowhere. Great match. Out of nowhere, Taker starts, getting the upper hand, tombstones him, gets the casket ready. Sabio Vega, all the people in his group, I can't think of their name, Los something. They come out of nowhere. The New Age Outlaws, they're all teching Undertaker. Everyone's beating up Taker, and you can just feel, I'm telling you, you can just feel Kane was kind of coming out of nowhere. Like, you're just waiting for it. Lights go out. Here comes Kane. The crowd goes wild. So much different than wrestling nowadays. Crowd goes wild. Kane comes out, destroys everybody, leaves. Like, you're like, what's going on? Like, who's gonna be the champ? Kane goes to do his pyro, and then it botches, and you're like, what? What's like? And then Kane attacks Taker. Fucking either choke slams him, tombstones him, does something, puts him in the casket. Shawn Michaels closes it. Shawn Michaels is the champ. He'll fight Stone Cold. Kane goes out and, with Paul Bearer, that devious man, he goes, gets an axe, starts, smashing the casket, pours gasoline on it, sets Taker on fire. And that's the end of the pay-per-view. You don't know until the next Raw that Undertaker got out alive. Like, because then at the next Raw, they open up the casket and there's no one in there, and they're like, what? But at the end of this pay-per-view, you thought that Taker was done, especially kids. So, like, this pay-per-view did a fantastic job of not only hyping up Stone Cold, the biggest face at the time, the up-and-comer, against Shawn Michaels, like this huge heel, like keeps winning despite having no talent, it seems like, even though he's one of the best wrestlers ever. But you also get to hype up this huge Undertaker and Kane fight just 2 months away. At the time, you don't even know if Taker's, like, you're like, what the world's going on? Like, who's gonna, like, and everyone knows what happens next, in Raw. The next Raw comes out, and over the next month, Kane comes out, Paul Bearer's like, I want Stone Cold, and blah, blah, blah. And Taker makes his return. So overall, this pay-per-view is one of the best pay-per-views ever. It's a classic, obviously, and it's very paramount into the Attitude Era and developing new superstars for the Attitude Era. If this pay-per-view is done any differently by maybe a different creator, there's no guarantee that just based off this one pay-per-view that anything like would happen the way it did going into wrestling. This pay-per-view it was not that long. It did a good job of cutting a lot of the BS other than the midget match and just, just wrestling, man, and just telling a story. That's one thing that you don't see nowadays, man. People could tell stories back then. They knew the business so well. It was so different that they could tell stories just by body motions. For example, for no reason whatsoever, during the Royal Rumble, Owen Hart's coming out, and this random dude, Jeff Jarrett, with Jim Cornette, NWA champion, comes out, strutting his shit, acting like a main event fighter, and everyone's like, who the fuck is this? And destroys Owen Hart. No storyline behind it. Jeff Jarrett comes out later on in the pay-per-view. Owen Hart comes out and destroys Jeff Jarrett. Just like that, you have one of the best, Intercontinental European champions ever in Owen Hart. And then against the NWA champion Jeff Jarrett, who ends up becoming one of the best wrestlers ever and one of the biggest innovators in wrestling history. TNA. Jeff Jarrett is a self-made man. Anyways, this pay-per-view is very big to the Attitude Era. Great pay-per-view, worth every cent at the time, and it's also worth every second that you spend watching it. I greatly, greatly enthuse you guys to watch it. So the next one is going to be No Way Out, 1998. That's going to be the next pay-per-view. After this, there's an 8-man tag in that match. So we'll see how it goes. Not one for the title, so it will be HBK and Shawn Michaels, or HBK and Stone Cold. And one more thing I'd like to bring up. Mike Tyson is announced the next day that he's going to be the special ref for that match. He was there throughout the whole show. It was great seeing Iron Mike, especially in his youth. So I hope you guys enjoy. Give me a like, subscribe, and hopefully there will be more to come.